Every now and then when working with the Helix, there are some features that we have built into some of the effects blocks that are so simple that they can oftentimes be overlooked. And even for somebody like myself who does a lot of videos that are education-based videos that show folks how to use certain functions in the Helix, I even overlook those thinking, well, everybody knows this already and everybody knows how to use this. But then I sometimes get a lot of questions about certain features that I have maybe mistakenly assumed everybody knows about, or I see questions in some of the forums. And today's feature that I'm going to be looking at is just one of those situations. What am I talking about? Well, let's go over to HXEdit and take a look. So if you are one of the many people who use Helix reverbs and delays, you'll very likely be very familiar with this little button down here that says trails. Now, a lot of folks already know what this does, and a lot of folks use it very effectively. Other folks don't and possibly just ignore it. And the reason I know that is because I have seen a lot of questions, and some recently, and received a lot of questions about how to get a certain situation, shall we say, happen when using reverbs and delays. Now, you might ask what that situation is. Well, another way to describe trails, sometimes maybe more commonly referred to as spillover. So what trails control is going to do, and you'll see that we have this both on reverbs and delays. What the trails function is going to do is it's going to allow whatever residual repeats in the case of a delay that we have will continue to repeat when we disengage that effects block. However we do that, whether with snapshots or with a foot switch, doesn't matter. It's going to keep those echoed repeats going. With trails off, when we turn the effect off, it's going to cut out any echoes, any repeats, any reverb decay immediately and abruptly, which can sometimes be very unnatural sounding. Or at other times, maybe exactly what somebody wants. Maybe it's the end of a song and we want everything to just stop dead. So some folks might say, well, why do we even have that? And it's for that reason alone, is that not everybody's going to have the same use case, and some people may want that more natural ability to have the decay of the reverb or the echoes of the delay to continue even after they've disengaged the effect. So let's take a look at some of the possible use cases for this, and also some sound examples of what this actually sounds like, in hopes that maybe more people will actually pay attention to the trails. And I'm just as guilty as them. Sometimes I'll dial in a tone and realize, oh, I didn't pay attention to my trails. My default setting, I would have to say, is most often I have trails on. I would possibly turn it off in a very special use case where maybe, like I mentioned before, the end of a song, I just want an abrupt stop. So what I've done here is I have a little preset based around the template I oftentimes use, just based around the Rev Gen Red amp model, one of my favorite amp models, both in real life and in the Helix. And I've set up a delay and a reverb with fairly high aggressive settings, shall we say, high mix, lots of repeats on the feedback for the delay. And I have a dynamic room with 2-second decay and a fairly high mix. But this is just so that there's no mistaking when they're turned on or off. This isn't how I would normally dial them in. Now, what I do have is 2 snapshots as well. I have one that's called off, snapshot 1, and one that's called on, which is snapshot 2. And you'll notice that both the delay and the reverb turn on when I go to snapshot 2. On snapshot 1, they are both disengaged. You'll notice right now that I'm going to have the delay and the reverb both with trails off. I also have the delay assigned to foot switch 7. And as you can see also here, the reverb is on foot switch 8. So I'm going to show you 2 ways that this can be used. So let's start off talking about snapshots. So here's the little preset that I have. Here's what the tone sounds like. All right, very dry as a bone. If I switch over to snapshot 2, extremely wet, overly wet, lots of reverb, lots of delay. Might sound cool in some situations, but probably more than I would normally use. But now here's what happens. When I switch from snapshot 2 with the delay and the reverb on to snapshot 1, because trails are off on both of those, you're going to hear a very abrupt stop to both the decay of the reverb and the echo repeats of the delay. And let's listen to what that sounds like. If you notice, I foot switched, watch up here when it switches. So you can notice if I was maybe playing a solo, playing a lead up higher on the fretboard, maybe some high bendy note to end the solo with my echo and reverb on, and I wanted to go back to a really dry rhythm guitar, if I was to do that, something like maybe like this, you can see it had a very unnatural kind of transition where it went from this really wet lead sound and the nice delayed repeats that I was going to have on my lead just cut off abruptly. Now, if I was to turn trails on both the reverb and the delay, now when I go to play this same sort of idea, you'll hear that when I switch over, that those echoes and reverb decay continue on. So now if I was in the same situation where I was soloing, you can hear that there's a much more natural transition from the lead with the wet reverb and delayed repeats into the dry rhythm sound. And for my purpose in that particular situation, I would much prefer having the trails on. Now, we could also do something where we said, well, you know, I don't want the reverb to continue, but I do want the echoes to continue. And we could, you know, always do that type of a thing too. So here we are with the reverb trails off. So we're going to get reverb here. But when I switch, the reverb will be cut off abruptly, but the echoed repeats of the delay will continue. So we can really fine tune this. Again, in our situation, we're coming out of a solo. You hear that those echoed repeats continued, and maybe we didn't want that wash of reverb to continue. So we can really fine tune this in a really useful way. Now, the other way we could use this is if I was to just go back to snapshot 1 where these are off, and I'll go to pedal board mode here where I have the ability to now foot switch either of these on or off. Let's turn our trails off. Again, you know, if maybe we're not using snapshots, maybe we're just using a delay and we're going to turn it on for a solo. And off to go back into our rhythm. Again, you see how that was very abrupt, very unnatural sounding. And that was much more natural. It just flowed into one another. Now, what if we were in a situation where I was playing on this second snapshot, and I'm going to turn the trails off for everything here. Maybe I'm playing a part with this big wet sound and the song is going to end on one last chord and I need all of this to turn off. So I could be going... And right on that last chord hit, I switched to the snapshot where everything is off because I wanted to stop abruptly with the rest of the band. Because I had trails off, that worked really nicely. If I had trails on in the very same situation, we're going to get those delayed repeats and reverb decay continuing. It's going to be up to us, obviously, to decide which of these use cases we need, but the fact that we have that ability to turn this spillover, or as we call it in the Helix, trails on or off, it really is going to give us the ability to tailor it to exactly what we need. All right, I know some of you may look at this and go, well, duh, trails. We all know what trails do. But believe it or not, I get a lot of questions about this, and I see a lot of questions about people saying, how can I get my delayed echoes to continue when I switch from my lead to my rhythm tone? You know, this is one of the use case scenarios. How can I have the delay abruptly cut off when I end the song, you know? So these situations do arise, and there are some people who just don't realize there's this simple little button at the bottom called trails, and we can really tailor every snapshot and every preset to exactly what we need. And I think that that is one of the most useful features that we have on the Helix. Very simple, sometimes overlooked, sometimes not even known that it's there, unfortunately. So I hope this video shines a little bit of light on that and clears up any confusion that anybody may have had about what trails actually do as far as our time-based effects like reverb and delay go. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would get some use out of watching it, and also subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for sharing your time with me. Ciao for now.